CEO brings a hire that nobody has ever met before to do a job that doesn't exist and nobody knew it will be.
That is it. That is it. Like,
it is not even rare.
Unstructured.
This is not rare. This has happened.
No. I get told about it fairly often. It's like, I'm like, oh, you hired that person. I didn't realize you were looking for that one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. At Gamescom, you hired him at 4 a.m. Let's go.
Yeah.
Taco Bell.
I've known him. Don't worry, man. I've known him for years. He's going to do great things. 6 months later, where is that guy? Oh, yeah, he's gone.
Folks, give me just 15 seconds of your time. As you know, the best teams don't happen by an accident, and at Deconstructor of Fun Talent, we connect the top 1% of operators with the companies shaping the future of games, tech, and consumer apps. Our network runs deep. Founders, product leaders, growth mavens, and operators who know how to ship and scale. So whether you're a company looking for the hands-on leader or an executive ready for your next big chapter, we are the bridge between great people and great opportunities. To find out more, go to the link in the description or go to deconstructoroffun.com/talent. Right. The hard thing about hiring for startups is that you have to make life-changing decisions about people with shockingly little information, serious financial constraints, and massive urgency. And the hard thing about being a founder is realizing that the wrong hire doesn't just slow you down, it becomes the culture of the company that you're trying to build. So today, we're joined by two people who sit on the front lines of those decisions. Joe Burridge, head of talent at Play Ventures and host of the Talent Game podcast. Joe, is this the first time on the podcast?
Yeah, it is. And I've been listening for I've been listening for years now, actually. In fact, I often say to my team, it was the episode with Jordan Mazer, like over 2 years ago. I was listening to that as like prep for my interview prep for this job at Play Ventures. So thanks.
You want to hear something funny? That podcast was used as the prep for Play Ventures when they're hiring head of talent. I had to send it in advance before editing so that they could get ready to hire you who listen to the same podcast. Jordan Mazer, shout out.
Yeah. Jordan's actually, it was, and then did a follow-up call with me and everything else. But yeah, that's when I first started listening to podcasts. So it's been over 2 years of listening. First time attendee though.
All right. Well, thank you for glazing. Miki Blasko, head of talent at Deconstructor of Fun. Welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, we did one over the summer about fractional rules. I think this one will be more exciting, so I'm looking forward to it.
No, that was exciting as well. So
for me, it's more exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Well, both of you have well over a decade in the recruitment game, so I want to just jump in directly and start with the uncomfortable truth. So Joe, we'll start with you. What's the biggest misconceptions founders have about hiring into early stage startups?
Yeah, I think the most common, I think founders think it's too easy in the beginning. And because of that, they don't plan effectively enough. They think, okay, the money's come in, they've made say if they're funded, let's assume in this case, like I work for a VC, so the money's come in, they make the noise about it, and they're like, great, we're going to just hire. We're going to go from the 5 of us or 10 of us, and we're just going to start hiring. That's the plan. And very often I'm like, great, okay, so have you thought about like what culture you're aiming to build for? Have you thought about how you're going to sell this company to people, especially people on very high salaries or in very good jobs? Have you thought about the talent plan, like what skill sets are missing in the company? Have you thought about your hiring process before you just start throwing job ads out there? All of this stuff. And I think the people that have been founders before, or people that are perhaps more operationally mature, probably going to use that phrase quite a lot. You can separate those out because those founders have thought about all of those things, and they understand that it's a real commitment. And usually it's the CEO who takes on the hiring, and then suddenly it's a case of, I guess the other mistake is mistaking how much time and resources all of that hiring is going to take as well. So the seasoned founders know it's hard, know it's going to take a lot of time. and that the best hires don't just happen straight away, especially in the early days.
My biggest one that I see a lot is like vastly underestimating the amount of time and the quality to which these people, like the founder themselves, will need to sell. I think that's almost like it's you have a junior recruiter and then a funding announcement, and everyone should want to come work for you. I think that's usually how people start out, and it's very different, especially when hiring execs. They might have more difficult questions than even your investors, because right, they're in games companies doing the job, and so I think also the level of scrutiny gets underestimated a bit, and yeah, I think it's the selling part versus the assessment that most people don't get right in kind of that.
So think that the brand, whatever the brand that they carry from their previous job, will carry them, as well as the VC backing equals same as talent magnetism. They funded me, they gave me $1 million. All 10 of you should join right away. I understand that doesn't happen outside the VC bubble.
I was going to say as well, you mentioned, Miki, the word quality. Also, that can be a tricky one in terms of the quality bar. I think the assumption like, okay, we've got millions in the bank, therefore we'll be able to get the best talent. It's like, money doesn't just directly correlate to better people or higher skills people. Probably going on a bit of a tangent here.
Yeah, I want to ask about that. So you said money doesn't correlate to better people. I have a quote Ben Horowitz was saying in one of his millions of sayings, he was talking about the Netflix model, where basically you pay whatever it takes to hire killers or assassins or whatever you want to put it, 10Xers. But most founders don't have Reed Hastings' checkbook. So what's the kind of a truth here? Is overpaying a survival tactic, or is it a way to, show progress, or is it a highway to an acqui-hire?
So when it comes to pay, I think about, you hear all of the time, you could say like highly paid senior engineer, principal engineer at Google quits to join a startup. Or like when I was at EA and Epic, big gaming companies, one of the top reasons that we'd have in HR systems at both of those two companies, top reason to leave, joined a startup, right? And most of the time, they'd be leaving for less pay, like right. You should be assuming less salary, like less short term pay at least. So why are these incredibly talented, smart people taking massive pay cuts to do these things over and over and over again all over the world? And it tends to be because there's a variety of reasons, but I think the top reason would be they're incredibly driven on the mission of what that team is doing, and they believe that team is uniquely set up to achieve that. It's much how like you would assess as an investor, and because you believe so much that team is going to achieve it, you want to be there right at the beginning, and often those types of people want to just build stuff, and perhaps these large companies are just moving so slow and there's just so much red tape. It's frustrating enough to go off and do that. So yeah, I say to founders, I'm like, it's okay not to pay well as long as the mission is clear, and the long-term incentive is there. Like, and the long-term incentive, yes, could be like equity and the financial payoff, but it could also be all of the learnings they're going to get just to fast track their career from individual contributor and then scaling up with that business, potentially becoming a C-level. That's massively valuable. Or just doing something they really, really love to do, and it's just such a unique opportunity. They're willing to take the financial hit. There's a variety of reasons there, but I think when startup founders get a bit coy about pay and everything else, they're a bit shying away from that. They find it really awkward to discuss pay. I'm like, no, lean into it and be like, we're not going to pay you a Google salary, funnily enough, because we don't have the money. But here's all of the variety of things that will be massively beneficial to you if you're willing to dive in and take a seat on the rocket ship, so to speak.
Yeah, selling is super, super important when you're getting key talent. And there's so many tips and tricks there, because in the end, people think that it's all about salary. Why would I leave somewhere where I get third of the salary? But you can say, hey, come here, let's build. It takes us 2 years max. In 2 years, you'll know. You can go back to Google, but imagine what you can learn what you what you learn where you're being here. Imagine the future. Imagine being the leader. But Miki, how do you win these A players when you're trying to hire them without actually paying what they're worth?
One part, which is the financial part, is obviously equity. And I think that most founders already sit on like enough experience in selling their own equity story because let's assume they're funded, right? Like that's what we're talking about. So that's one part of it. And then the other is kind of, I think what Joe also was saying, it's like the role breadth and just decision velocity, like the ability to choose your tech stack, to choose your infrastructure, to make decisions and make them fast and make them locally and not be kind of a victim of someone changing something over your head and completely messing up with your next 6 month runway or plan or whatever you were doing. Like even if you speak with Google engineers, they're often pulled in between teams because things just change over their heads and they have no control over it. So like often when people want to step out of that environment and go to somewhere smaller, like they have to assume that the comp is going to be different. And I think the trade-off is often it stems from the size of your company, right? Like you're not a heavyweight, you're not Google, but you have flexibility, you have adaptability. So there's like that on a categorical level. And then I think also on a personal level, like if someone is a young parent, they're going to value flexible hours or being able to work from home. And in some companies, that's just policy. We don't do that. You can actually create an advantage out of being smaller by being able to influence those things and manage around them. So I think those are the big ones. And then, I mean, there's a billion tips and tricks, but one thing that I don't think many people do and that I've found to be really successful, especially converting like senior talent for business type roles, is just sitting down the partner who invested from, let's say, the lead VC with the finalist candidate and then having them explain, this is why I invested in this company, this is where I see it going, this is how I think we're going to get there. That's hugely powerful, both because of like there's a commitment from the company's side to invest into that conversation, but it also gives a completely different perspective of someone who met this company when they knew nothing about them and decided to give them whatever 5 mil and spend the next X amount of years grinding through whatever industry you're in together. So I think those things help a lot. But I think Joe touched on all of the main points, like high level.
Okay, that makes all sense. Talking about getting those key hires, how much should founder optimize for culture versus the competence when getting these key hires? Because like as you guys said, you're coming through, you're saying, oh, you like to work from home, your company doesn't give to work from home. Well, for us, you can work from home and so forth. So you're really bending for the first key hires. How much should you bend, Joe?
If I had to choose one over the other, I would go with culture over competence. And that is because the culture's a never-ending change and in flux. Every time you add one person into the mix, they have the potential to change your company culture. But ultimately, if you look at these key culture shifts as companies grow, so like when you hit 10 employees, when you hit 25, when you hit 50, 100, 200, 500, 1,000, right? It tends to have these like key big shifts in how the company operates, how it communicates, and how it's run. And the most emotionally, or let's say operationally mature people, again, know at which point in a company's journey they add the most value. I love having a conversation with someone where I could be pitching one of our pre-seed or seed companies, and they say, "Hey Joe, I love this, but my skill set is actually very much like Series B onwards. I would love it if you come back to me when this company hits that." And I'm like, "Great, thank you. Let's save us both a lot of time, and I'll come back to you at that point." I mean, it's loose, right? Series B can mean different things at different companies, but yeah. Point being, going back to culture, that if you have the right cultural glue amongst that initial core group, meaning they all believe in the company, they all communicate and collaborate in a very similar way. They have very similar values as well. then things can move so fast. And if you've just got bright people who understand the industry, there's a lot of people can upskill very quickly. So there's that. The flip argument from that is if you're a very specialized product and there's just a lot of specialist knowledge you need in this company, then fine, you really need to go after the competency, but never sacrifice that from the culture. I think everyone has worked with, at some point in time, the talented asshole, right? The person who's like, oh yeah, they're amazing, but also they're the worst person I've ever worked with. And that's just a recipe for, okay, one toxic hire in a corporate, thousands of people. Okay, just avoid that person. One toxic hire in a company of 10 people, 10% of your whole company is toxic. So that's why it's much better to lean in on high cultural assimilation with lower competencies. And it might be the point that as you grow and you scale, that person who was fantastic in the early days is not keeping up, and that's okay. That's a difficult conversation to let them go, perhaps, but it's okay. And then a new wave comes in, and then maybe they then check out when the company hits another stage, and you just find these ebbs and flows. Even the founders, by the way, can also go through that ebb and flow. This founder is amazing at the 0 to 100, and as soon as you get bigger than that, they have to check out, and you have to substitute them in with someone who's more operationally mature. I told you I was going to use that phrase far too often. But that's my take on why I would value culture over competence, at least in the early days. Yeah.
Miki, how many founders or CEOs or whoever is leading the hiring process, how many of them know the culture that they're building?
Yeah, very few, I think, because culture often is like partially like the unconscious parts of the behavior of the founder and leadership in the company, like that also gets ingrained. So they're usually very focused on the stuff like, okay, make sure I know everyone's name, make sure that everyone gets called out in a meeting to share their own view and whatever. But there's this whole other side of behavior that I think we're just generally as people blind to. That also comes out. I was actually going to contradict a little bit and go with competence first, in the sense that I think you need people who can do stuff to do stuff, right? And then culture, fit, alignment, shared norms, values, whatever comes after that to me. But I think the way that Joe interpreted the question was more like competence as an experience doing the thing that you're hiring them for. I would think of competence as in like maybe one level higher than that, like people who are, I don't know, proactive, creative, can get stuff done. Like in that sense, that's what I would optimize for. With culture, I would look to set, instead of like this is how I want things to be, I'd look to set it on like a continuum with fairly hard boundaries. So if you say I don't want to hire assholes, and then this is where I draw the line, anywhere between that and whatever else is on the other end of that continuum, I'm fine as long as they can do their jobs. That's how I'd look at it in the first 10 people. Because like when you're in the first 10 people, you've either got like some pre-seed money or you're looking for it, and you have no runway to maybe 1 year of runway or 10 months of runway. Like you gotta get there fast. And then if there's someone who can contribute to getting you there fast, but then just becomes way too much of a burden to carry beyond that, you can always address that down the line. So I'm a little bit on the other side of it, but I think it's really close. Like I would hope not to have to choose between culture and competence in most cases. They should both be within some boundaries, but when you do have to, and especially at the early stage, I'd go for competence. Yeah.
Joe, when you're working with these startups, how can you tell the company that this person is not perhaps the right cultural fit? Like you talked about a phase fit, that is much clearer. But a cultural fit, like, do you know the company, like, Play has what, 120 companies in the portfolio? Can you sort of say, I don't think she's the right fit cultural?
Yeah. When I have this exercise with founders, it's like, first of all, can you just ask a founder, what is it like to work there? And they'll give a fairly high level, superficial thing. And be like, okay, cool. Like, how does your company make decisions? All right, let's drill down to it. How does your company make decisions? It's like, what is it like in terms of quality when it comes to product and shipping? How often does your company meet together? How many remote employees do you have? And then you can just start going through these things, and then I can extract to be like, okay, the way that you generally like to communicate is like this. Do you want to continue communicating like that going forward? And if it's yes, it's like, great, that's one of your values. If the answer is no, it's like, okay, maybe you need to create a value that which you can then clearly explain to employees, and more importantly, everyone involved in the hiring process. Because the easiest way to change a company culture is making sure everyone new coming in is of the culture you're aiming for. So every company culture has strengths and it has things that are not so great. There's no perfect company out there. And I think when founders can accept that, that's fine. In fact, even better when they can use it as a selling point in their interview process. Being like, working here is going to be great for these reasons, and it's also going to be really hard and possibly suck for all of these other reasons. So that was a very vague answer to your question of how can someone tell about culture. But one other thing I'll say is, like, at least if everyone in the company is really aligned on, let's say, the top 3 most important values or character attributes that they can assess for every time, then at least that starts to point them into the right direction. You've got the really obvious polarity ones, like one of our investments is a very top-down hierarchical. It's like what the CEO says is what happens. And so if you bring someone into that company who comes from a highly collaborative, very flat culture, and that's where they thrive, I'll say to them on a call and be like, hey, I actually don't think you will do well in this company, not because you're not good at your job, but because you're just going to be butting heads with that culture. And so and even, if you've got the core creative team are there in person locally, and they're like, yeah, we think we're going to add in another person who will be in this core team, but they're going to be remote. Like, I don't think you've done enough like training yet for this team to really make that work, or that's going to just be a really bad experience for that other person. So that's just two examples of where that comes from.
It's hard to say what is the right thing at the right time, but with teams that are core teams that didn't come together for the startup, but they actually have been a core team for a longer time. They have already established a culture, a way of working, and they kind of know what type of people to hire. But oftentimes what I see is people who have merged together into a startup, they don't have a cohesive culture. And for them, I would almost recommend, just like Miki said, to define the culture once you hit the PMF, because it will take you so long to figure out who you are and what do you do and write it up. And meanwhile, you need to actually have a product to survive till the next stage. So it would depend. But I'm not against the defining of culture. It takes a long time. And if you haven't done it, do it after PMF.
Stay ahead of the competition with Sensor Tower, the trusted source for mobile marketing intelligence. Whether you're tracking trends, benchmarking performance, or scouting the next big hit, Sensor Tower delivers the data that drives strategy. Dominate the charts with Sensor Tower.
Game devs. Here at Heroic Labs, we know that great gameplay is what players love, but integrating metagame features like challenges, progression, and rewards is crucial for retention and monetization. But coding them is a tedious and time-consuming process. That's why top studios have turned to Hero from Heroic Labs. Hero provides a complete suite of battle-tested metagame features that are quick to implement, letting you spend more time on the core gameplay experience. Ready to ship fully featured, engaging games? Check out Hero today at heroiclabs.com.
The other point I was going to say is, like, if you can't measure it, then you can't manage it. And so because culture is just this ethereal, nebulous thing, at least just get started. That could be a Google form out to all employees every 3-6 months, being like, what do you love about working here? What don't you like about working here? And just trying to get a sense of what they all like about it. And when it comes to hiring,
but not really, Joe, because when you go back to like Nike founder, like Phil Knight would write it down quickly. Like, these are the fucking 14 things that this is the culture of the Nike and this is how I want it. And that's what tends to happen is like, you have to have one leader who built it. It's not a community that gets together and be like, hey, what would happen in a perfect world? Like, I believe that it has to be 1-2 people who really set the boundaries. And if it's not this, then you're out. And if this, you're in.
Yeah.
It's a hard game.
Yeah, no, the common theme, I love that example as well, because the common theme between the two is that something has been written down, has been said. Like however you extract those things. In the Nike case, it was one person being like, I want the company run like this. And they were actually really good bits of advice as well. I know the example you're talking about. The other way is like, okay, I'm not quite sure. So actually my culture is very collaborative and flat. So let's just pull in everything, and then I'm going to use that data to ultimately come up with a refined list of ways that I want this company to run. Either way, the end output is a really clear, defined values, which we're going to use everywhere from product management to hiring to the way we make executive decisions as a company. But ultimately, it is a list. When founders don't have anything, then it's like you can't sell the culture. You can't advise people on what decisions to make. It's just going to be a mess very quickly.
Let's move on to the next thing that I find really interesting, which is so many startups hire people who look really, really great on LinkedIn, but then they melt in that 10-person team. So in other words, Miki, I wanted to ask you, what makes somebody hireable at a startup versus somebody who's better for a big corp?
In most cases, I think the easy path to take, and which people do take, even though it's not always the best, is just to look for the pattern, right? They've already been at a startup, they've kind of succeeded, etc. So I think that's the easy answer. I think what I look for, especially when we're like trying to bring someone out of a bigger org into a Series A or B, you know, relative to where they're at, that's an early stage company. The first thing I try to look for is, are they visibly pissed off about their job? Like, are they saying, like, I wish I could do this and it should be done this way, and I've had these ideas and it's taking ages for me to get an answer? Like, that kind of frustration with not being able to do things and not being able to make decisions and take ownership for them. I think that in most cases where it succeeded, that has come through. And so that's one. And then I think, like, when you're going earlier stage, I think there's like a set of things that just need to be done for the job that I try to look for in through like interview questions, like behavioral stuff, having conversations. It's just like, can this person ideate? Like, are they curious? Are they creative? Are they do they have belief in the things that they're saying, or are they kind of pulling it out of that morning's newspaper, you know, like that kind of thing on the ideation front? Can they actually do stuff? Like, are they opportunistic? Have they gone after things previously? Do they have a story of like being proactive, of being resilient, of bashing their head through walls, right? These kinds of things. And then I think the third one, and this is mainly for roles where you're hiring for leadership, is like, do they show signs of being able to, I don't know, instill vision and being able to get people to do things together, and to doing that in a sort of natural way. So like for me, it's the people who are able to move from chaos towards process can be right for a startup, but not the people who need process to be able to, you know, be effective. I think that's kind of the continuum, but there is nuance, because like at pre-seed, you just shouldn't, like, unless they're a founder and it's their idea, you just shouldn't bother with that, because you have much different problems. And then when you enter like seed A, B, C, like Joe also said, there's very like stage appropriate people. Like, it's very different if someone is a door opening salesman in a company, or if they're like a CRO who's setting up a team of 40 people to sell some product globally. Like, that's a very different kind of process. And someone might be like, you'll have a much larger hit rate of getting corporate people into the latter job than into the prior one, just due to the challenge being different. So I think there's like no one right stage, or there's no one real criteria, but those are the things that I tend to look for. And I think just companies that have an openness to hire from other places other than startups, even though they're startups, I think have a great advantage at getting top talent, because you're fishing in a pond from which no one in your own respective industry is trying to fish from. If you do go after that, so I think that's, if you do it well, the risk is higher, but if you do it well, you can get exceptional people that way.
Joe, there's a lot of conversations all the time when hiring to a startup, especially with the board, is like, for a critical role, they're like, is this a person, a startup person? They always start going back to the LinkedIn, like, have they had that, that startup experience? Can they handle the chaos? Can they handle the unstructured environment? Have you seen people who don't have that experience, who are senior at their job, whatever they are, senior directors and higher up? Have you seen them succeed in startups despite not having early stage experience?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. One thing I was just going to be very open about, though, in the almost 2 years I've been at Play Ventures, I've placed people that I was like, this one's a killer. This is going to be great. And then, like, I check in with the founders 6 months later, and they're like, no, we have to let them go. It did not work out. Multiple times that has happened to me. So my role is very much a matchmaker and unveiling this talent. I'm not involved in the interview process as much, but still, it's, you can still be at it for 13 years and still be making these mistakes. And the key bit of advice there is make sure you have a really solid probation period, a period in which 3 to 6 months, usually advise a bit longer, perhaps in startups, where either the new employee or the founder can part ways quickly from each other. So that make sure you have those clauses in your employment contracts. But going back to your question, yes, you can. I think the red flag is they've been in corporates the whole life. And the reason they're now considering startups is because of necessity. They've been laid off. Very much the case in games industry. Last 4 years, the amount of times I've talked to people who have only ever been in massive companies, finally talking to me because they've gone through layoffs, and now they're considering startups because
they laid off from the safe places that they were working at.
Yes, yes, the safe places. I often say, actually, a VC funded startup with 2 years worth of runway is probably a lot safer than joining a AAA right now.
One of your selling tactics, we know.
Yeah, thank you. I would say that. I currently hire for startups, obviously. But yeah, so some of the green flags, though, I think these big companies, though, can still have, like Miki was saying, that you described as being visibly pissed off. I say they have, or like someone who's like a bias for action. Like even in these big companies, they can have these R&D type small, very proactive teams, which are just like shipping stuff, going from ideation to launch. And I'd argue that most large tech companies have these. And so find people that gravitate to these like types of projects. Even if still, like, do they have some sort of like entrepreneurial spirit? Like, what do they do in their spare time? Are they creating projects in their spare time? Do they have a skill set that they still cling on to, like hands-on? Like the classic example is the CTO that still codes in their spare time. To keep their skills fresh. It's like, okay, why do they? yeah, or like the head of engineering, perhaps. Also they haven't, this person hasn't been completely indoctrinated by the corporate machine. Like they are still down to earth in their communication. I think where startup founders are often like blinded by these corporate consultants coming in because they're exceptionally good and trained to just being able to sell what they can deliver at such a high premium. And that's where 3 to 6 months down the line, it's like, wait a minute, we've given this person so much money and nothing has really changed in our company. We haven't shipped anything. We haven't done anything.
I have a process for this. It's very, very simple, cool. No matter what the role is. Usually these higher ups, they will present cases or portfolios of what they have done. And what they have done is usually amazing. And it's from a big company and it looks pretty, or it's done pretty, or it's very functional, whether it's a game project or a tech project. The number one question you need to be asking is like, how did you do it? Meaning, like, how many people were doing it? How did you manage it? And there you would understand the scale and scope of the type of projects they were doing. It could be an art director that has done fantastic job. And yes, they did the visual development themselves, and then they had 100 people doing everything else. Can you afford that? If not, then this is the wrong person, no matter how good they are, but they need certain type of a scale. And then you find another person who's done it, but with 5 people. It's like, oh, wow, you did this only with 5? Yeah. And then it would explain how they did it, how it would, like, very nimble and so forth. So you're trying to understand how they have achieved their goals. And we've seen this, by the way, in multiple different hires, especially on the marketing side. You would get somebody from, somebody amazing, let's say Supercell. They would come in and they would talk about, I'm from such a small company. Look at our marketing campaigns we've done. And then you're like, wow. And the team is tiny, like barely anybody. And yes, of course, I did use like one of the most expensive creative agencies out of London and then one of the most expensive animation agencies out of Beijing and so forth. And it's like, oh, okay. So you coordinated, and yes, that's great job, but we don't have $1 million on a trailer, or like that's even low. Like you would say $3 million. So always asking how it was done, what were the budget, like tell me how the sausage was made, and there you would understand whether they're suitable for your company.
Yeah. So it's a quick confirmation anecdote on that. It's funny you mentioned marketing, because I think UA is definitely the most requested talent skill set across our entire portfolio, mobile gaming or mobile apps. UA, and it is interesting. You speak to someone who's like UA director, head of UA manager, even sometimes at a large company. It's like, great. Like, can you tell me about the hands-on, like, delivery of like spending cash on these channels? Like, can you just go into the weeds? They're like, okay, well, I manage a lead, and that lead manages someone who actually pushes the button.
You should see my one-on-ones. My one-on-ones are straight up fire.
Yeah, it's like I don't need the
my
people
team
management.
Loves me. Our offsite last
so many times, much blocking has been done.
Yeah,
so I don't need
my marketing producer is amazing, and our UA lead is perfect, and the agencies we work with are superb. So I chose all of them to maintain great relationships. And it's, again, not a knock on that person. It's just how they are working. 100%.
Yeah. People management and strategy as your number one top skill set. It's like that is not a recipe for a start where every single headcount has to pull their weight into delivering and growing the company. It's the reality of it.
Still sometimes it can work, but it's like you're not making an educated bet on that person by hiring them, right? Like, you have to know that you're taking a huge risk with it, but it can work, because some people are just so frustrated. I'm having one-on-ones with this person and they're not doing it right, and I just want to go do it, but I can't go do the freaking job. So that's the kind of frustration that I mentioned that I'm looking for. Is like, even if you're managing someone, you did that job before, you have all these ideas, and you can't kind of get them through. That can work, but it is risky, and it's
I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that. If you haven't done it in a small team, then you should be hired to a startup to do something you've done before, but with 1/10 of the resources. That's unlikely characteristic. But Miki, I wanted to ask you about how unhinged the founders tend to be. And actually have the Horowitz argued actually that the great founders are unhinged, and they have almost irrational belief that they can bend reality.
Yeah.
My question there is, like, do you think that unhinged founders attract top talent with their vision, or does that unhingedness repel them with the chaos? In the game of growth, everyone is looking for that power-up. Vibes is exactly that. It's built by industry people, so they actually get the challenges you're dealing with. As a result, they become the fastest growing gamified rewards platform out there. And the results are kind of nuts. With their AI-powered targeting, you're not just buying installs, you're bringing in the right players. And now they've got this new ROAS optimization engine, so your campaigns basically level up automatically. Vibes is built different. It's designed for growth. And I guess you could say it's powered by good vibes. Check out their DOF exclusive case studies by following the link in the description, and go to vybs.co. That's vybs.co Share your email and join the waitlist list.
Using clunky payment systems in your game? That's like fighting a boss with a wooden sword. AppCharge gives you the power-up you need. Seamless in-app purchases, global payments, and analytics that don't require a PhD. Monetize smarter, not harder. AppCharge, because your game deserves better loot.
In today's hyper-competitive digital landscape, understanding your app's journey from discovery to download isn't just insightful, it's the difference between scaling and stagnating. Enter AppsFlyer, the undisputed leader in mobile attribution and marketing analytics. They've mastered the science of making every ad dollar work harder by revealing exactly where your players come from and how they interact with your app. Their platform transforms mountains of complex data into clear, actionable intelligence that separates winning campaigns from budget-draining experiments. And I know that many of the top game companies leverage AppsFlyer and are a key partner in their success. AppsFlyer, where your app's potential meets performance.
I think it's both. And guys, I worked in gaming, in software, and in crypto. I've met some people. Yeah, I've met some people. I've met some people. Look, it's a complex thing because I think the same exact personality traits and behaviors that make someone brilliant and a great founder, they have a dark side to them. And that's exactly what makes them these kind of what you'd call unhinged, I guess. So I think one thing, if by unhinged we mean like an unusually deep belief or obsession with a topic and solving that topic and being all about that, that is almost a necessity if you're going to obsess over that for 10 years and spend 60, 70 hours a week doing it. But I think all the other stuff that I mentioned about like being a startup fit, like being able to ideate, to lead people, to execute well, all of these things, like if you look at the dark side, which is like hubris, pride, excessive confidence, being mercurial, impulsive, unpredictable, eccentric, like all of these things, most cases I've seen really go hand in hand, and it's the same exact people for the same exact reasons. So I think that the same things that attract people will also be the things that push some of those people away. And I think when you're going to work for someone, like you need to decide what sort of balance or symmetry between those two sides you personally can tolerate, right? And I think that's what I think is like the decision-making framework people should be using. Now, I think there's a lot of like, so what Mr. Horowitz said, but also what generally comes through from media of like founders, how they're represented in movies and series and whatever, they often highlight that dark side more so than they highlight the brilliant ideas and creativity. And so people get a false signal that, oh, this guy is such an asshole, I really should go work for him, you know? And then like 2-3 months down the line, because I'm sure it'll be brilliant and my 0.5% equity will be worth millions in a couple of years. So I think that it's both. I do think that many people kind of mix up the signals between like the brilliance and let's say like the dark side. But I think the reason they mix them up is first of all media representation, and the other is just that they are really the same character traits, just under different circumstances. So yeah, I don't know if that really answers the question. Yeah, they do go to work for unhinged people. Yes, that does attract people, but it also does push them away, and often it's the same people that it pushes away that were previously attracted by those traits.
So Joe, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, does a founder need to have a reality distortion field? That would be the way. Because reality distortion field, I'll give an example of somebody who I know has it. It's Christian Segerstrolle. He's founded Playfish, and before that Glue. So, and then Super Evil Megacorp. So, serial founder, highly accomplished. He had this sort of a thing where I would think about what they would be doing in his company, and I'd be like, this makes no sense. And I would meet with him and I'd be like, I don't know, this kind of makes sense. So he's just like distorted the reality that I analytically decided. And it's not about being an asshole. It's about really believing in what you're doing, causing others who wouldn't perhaps be of the same opinion to actually believe in what you're doing, especially if you're in their proximity.
Yeah. And that's arguably good leadership, right? A strong leader can rally a force. But to your point, I think Miki had a good summary of like, yes, these traits go hand in hand with others. I keep hearing this phrase recently, like the best founders make you feel uncomfortable, and my immediate reaction to that is like,
what?
I've heard it multiple times recently. Every time I'm like, really? I think about like, I don't want to say there's I was going to say, I don't want to say there's favorites in our portfolio, but there are definitely some founders that I find it easier to work with than others. And very often, their businesses are doing very well as well with that. So I'm getting into the territory of picking my favorite children. So I'm going to move away from that. Yeah. But point being is, I think we look at these glamorized outliers. Steve Jobs is obviously the classic one, but the reality is that they're outliers. If you treat people terribly, it doesn't matter how smart or ambitious you are, you're never going to be able to rally that force around you. And if you recognize as a founder, you're highly ambitious, highly intelligent, highly creative, and almost like this reality distortion field, but you have zero people skills, that's fine. You know that in your co-founders, you need to go find co-founders who obviously believe in you and everything else, but are also going to offset that skill set and help you rally that company, that team, and then everything else. I like the concept though of this reality distortion field, because especially when you're dealing with pre-seed and seed companies, a lot of the pitches, maybe it was just my ignorance, but I think even like a couple of years back, if AppCharge pitched me, I'd be like, nah, that sounds like a terrible idea. And then here we are now, they're absolutely flying, and everyone wants to jump in and be involved. So great. And when you chat to the founders there, incredibly compelling. They bring you on board that journey and everything else. And once you can see inside their mind, then it makes sense. So yes, I think that was a rather long-winded way to say. I think I'm with you. I'm with you is the point. And I call
it the reality distortion field, because once you get out of that field, you start losing your confidence. Like it's an interesting thing. You have to be in the proximity of the field, usually with these founders. Reality sets in.
Yeah. Also, yes, some reality distortion, like you believe in an alternate reality. That's what founders are doing, right? They are pitching to investors, be like, I believe if you invest in me, this company is going to change the world and the future is going to look like this. And so by nature, you are distorting reality. But if you bring someone in and during that conversation, they are on your side, but then cannot leave that conversation and cannot explain it to anybody else, or also can't be an ambassador for that idea, then maybe that founder is just living in their own world that doesn't translate somehow. But
but it's also a question, right, of like what kind of business you're trying to build. Because like if someone's like, hey, payments could be a bit cheaper if we use stable coins, why don't we do that? And because there's large volume, we can make a bunch of money. Like, sure, cool. And then there's the other guy who's like, let's put Wi-Fi into space and just like stream it from there. It's such a different level of ambition and like craziness. I think for the latter, you need someone who is unhinged as hell. And for the prior, you might just need someone who's worked at McKinsey for a long time with payments companies and spotted a niche and can go and build something around it. So it's like, it's also different, I think, of like the level of ambition scales with the unhingedness. And then you have this kind of ideal point in that scale of where you want to go. And depending on what you're building, I think that changes quite a bit.
Yeah. There's different ways to get people on board. But what I wanted to, talking about getting people on board, I wanted to touch upon this point of why do some founders really struggle to keep strong talent in their teams?
I've got a thought on that.
Go, Joe.
Go.
You're ready.
So when I'm explaining performance management, concepts to founders. And then, by the way, I have to ease them in gently because I can sound far too corporate sometimes with this. But I say the number one reason they're top talent. Let's say you've got your A players, you've got your mid section, and then you've got your underperformance. So, well, actually, even backtrack. Like, do they even have a format to even identifying who their top performers are? I think very often you ask a founder, like, who's your top performers? They can, even if they haven't done some sort of performance analysis, they can usually sense. But when your company gets like over 25 people, when you're not in the weeds with individuals every single day, you're just relying on what you perceive and also just word of mouth. And the best people on a conscious or subconscious level can be very good at promoting themselves. And then suddenly you have these A players that are just going under the radar. So first of all, they don't have any sort of performance management capabilities. They have no way of identifying who their underperformers are, who the top performers are, and who is in the middle. Now, the number one reason that A players quit is when they are surrounded by B and below players. The smartest people just want to be surrounded by the best and smartest people. Now, if you are dragging your feet, if you have no way of identifying who your underperformers are, you're like, oh yeah, I really like that guy. Like, your A player sat next to them, doing the job with them day in, day out. Like, oh my God, if I have to work another day with this person, I'm gonna just leave. So you can have like the personality high. You as a CEO, like, that person's great. It's like, no, they are gonna just drive
Cultural fit.
Else. Yes, cultural fit, terrible skills fit, right?
And then, cultural fit is like, I like you, is the way of a founder saying.
Yeah. So, like, both, we've already discussed the talented asshole, which is like high skill, low culture. And then the inverse is true for them to be an underperformer as well. And usually the inverse of like low skill but high culture. Both of these need to leave your business. And when you keep either of those two scenarios around, then your actual best talent is just going to leave. So it's usually, either poor management or being surrounded by underperformers tends to make your best people.
You put in performance management as the output of the employee, and then the culture as the other vertical, right?
Yeah, equally weighted where possible.
It's different at the companies I work with when I do the performance management model. Okay. It's always input and output. How much input do you put in as a manager to this person? And how much output do you get out of this person? Because you tend to want people who need limited input and high output. Because there can be people who take enormous input. You got to talk to Joe all the time, 101s 3 times a week. He's always stressed about something, but man, Joe does a good job. So you're coaching him to take a little bit less of input, but keep the output. And then they could be other way around and so forth. So those are the metrics. Because again, culture is so nebulous at these, pre-Series A or post-Series A startups.
Yeah. And I was thinking about the input-output thing is fine when you're measuring it. I think about the 9-box grid, if you've ever done that exercise. So you've got performance along X-axis, potential on the Y. So you take something like an intern, you're like massive amounts of input, really low amounts of output, but you're constantly assessing, is it even worth it? Is all of this effort up front? Are they on this hockey stick potential for output? Same with like the brand new hire. Every time you make a new hire, even if they're this like fancy exec that really experienced person, still, first few months is going to be really high input from whoever's training them up, teaching them about the company and everything else. But it's like you're constantly thinking, is it going to be worth it? So it's fine if it's high input when it should be high input. But yeah, there's a variety of reasons where you can make your best performers leave, but it tends to just come. I think I do just believe that the number one reason that people leave is when they're just surrounded by B players and below.
Mismanagement. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Miki?
Yeah, I was just thinking that about what Joe was saying about, people with potential. Like, you need a certain amount of critical mass in the company to even consider hiring people who need high input based on their potential, right? Because for the first 10 people, you want people who are low input, high output, because otherwise you can't get anything done. If you're spending most of your time on, speculating whether this person will become good or not in 6 months, then probably, you're taking time away from other things you should be doing. Once you get to, I don't know, Series A, you have 80 people, someone's really talented, they want to hire an intern, and they're going to put in the time with them and become more impactful. I think that's like, there's also a stage thing about it, is what I'm trying to say, I guess, is like when you need to, when you can allow yourself to kind of shift your thinking from just like hiring people who are super high output to like hiring people whose potential you believe in, and you believe it's a good investment for the future to actually bring them on board.
Talking about bringing people on board, and this is something we talked about in the beginning, but what's the right way for a startup to build an employer brand?
I think it starts with, well, definition of employer brand first. It's just like the perception of what it's like to work there. So a selling point I often say to founders that is rarely used. It's just like selling the team. They'll sell the team to get investment, or every time. Like part of the pitch deck is always the founders and their backgrounds, everything else. For some reason, they then don't follow on and use that during the hiring process, or at least in their branding and everything else. But when you're interviewing somewhere, you're typically going to research that company as much as possible. And it's amazing when you actually get to see the faces of people who work there, especially if they're talking very open. Whether it's like employee spotlight on your social pages, or you've just got some great individuals on the team that are very like out there and talking and everything else.
Ex-Riot, ex-Blizzard.
Yeah. What? No. Well, maybe. I immediately was like, no. But maybe. I'm not necessarily shouting off their past accomplishments. It's more about like, hey, I currently work here. This is what it's like. This is, and the more that you can lift up the veil of what it's like working there, the more that you have a chance of an employer brand that stands out. As opposed to so many startups, it's like they just have a website that's a holding page, app coming soon, and that's it. and like they can look up the founders on LinkedIn.
I'll give a one mistake that we've done. I remember very clearly when we named the company Savage Games Studios, and we had a very, very, very senior engineer, really considering to join us from a reputable large company. And his wife told us, like, you're not going to join a company that is called Savage Game Studios. Like, that doesn't sound like a good place to work at. So also the naming of your company, though might sound really cool to you, might be deterring to candidates down the line.
I would have loved to have seen what his wife said if he was interviewing at Evil Megacorp. That would be
super evil Megacorp.
Great.
AKA Microsoft. Anyways, okay. Miki, I wanted to kind of move on and talk about like your work with a lot of studios, and ask what are the hiring patterns that correlate most tightly with success.
One interesting thing that Joe said back in the beginning was a lot of founders approach this as if it's easy. It's a bit like fighting. You ask people, can you fight? They'll be like, yeah. And then when it comes time to do it, everyone kind of feels like they can't. And I think that's the same with this kind of stuff. So giving it enough, like treating it seriously, and giving it time, I think that's the highest one. I always see like multiple founders or second, third time founders, they're always more successful. They spend about 50-60% more time with you, the headhunter, assessing you, assessing candidates, talking to you, asking you questions about how it's going. They pay attention to the feedback coming from the market. They understand what they can get or what they can't get. And like usually the way I explain it to first-time founders or people who haven't done this before, just to find a relatable analogy, it's like product discovery. Like you define the problem you're trying to solve. You define your hypothesis on solving that problem. That's like your JD and role scope and whatever. And then you go out into the market and then you test your hypothesis. And 99.999% of the time, your initial hypothesis is wrong and you need to iterate and you need to change it. And I think that's how you really understand and are able to close the gap between like what you want to hire and the problems you want to solve and what's available and accessible to you out in the market. So I think treating it more as like a iterative input output type of process, as opposed to like, this is what I need, go get it. That works if you're looking for like 10 engineers with an identical background and there's billions of them or whatever. But when you're looking for execs, that usually doesn't. So I think like this kind of iterative learning focused process, this helps a lot. And then the other thing is like, again, making sure that the internal process itself also makes sense, and the people who are involved are notified and speak to each other, and you have a common understanding of what problem you're trying to solve, what you're trying to hire for, that there's some cadence of communication going on between those people. Like, I have a really funny story about like what not to do. I was helping this very, very technical team hire a couple of engineers for their team. And they sat down, they brought in a guy, their head of engine was from Google, like 10 years. And they sat down and they're like, okay, we're going to build an amazing process that's going to eliminate all of the hiring risks that we're afraid of. And they built it, and it really eliminated all the hiring risks, so much for that they couldn't hire anyone. And so after 12 months, they went back, adjusted the process, and they hired the first guy they spoke to 12 months before. So you can also go overboard with that, right? So it's really, it's making sure that you're learning through that process, that you have this kind of iterative approach. That's what I see as a good pattern. And yeah, having a single decision maker, not too many veto rights, people giving opinions, but not, and I think not trying to please people. Like, I've never seen one high impact hire that went really well, that stuck around for years, who didn't piss someone off. Like, if you hire someone who's going to make change, who's going to build things, who's going to develop things, someone there who's clinging to this status quo is going to get pissed off. And that's fine. And that's needed for your company to grow and develop. So yeah, those are the things.
Joe, which hiring patterns correlate with implosion?
Well, I was going to say for the other one that have it just a structured process where everybody involved in the interview process knows what the job is and what good looks like, what bad looks like. Every single interview has a purpose. There's no replicated questions. Everyone is clear on what values they're looking for in the person. Everyone's clear on what skills they're looking for in a person. That sounds very obvious, but the amount of times startups are like, okay, next you're going to chat to the CMO next, and then maybe the next person,
so vice versa is CEO brings a hire that nobody has ever met before to do a job that doesn't exist and nobody knew it will be.
That is it. Like,
it is not even rare.
Unstructured.
This is not rare. This has happened.
No. I get told about it fairly often. It's like, I'm like, oh, you hired that person. I didn't realize you were looking for that one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. At Gamescom, you hired him at 4 a.m. Let's go.
Yeah.
Taco Bell.
I've known him. Don't worry, man. I've known him for years. That he's going to do great things. 6 months later, where is that guy? Oh, yeah, he's gone. So but structure and rigor, and then bring. And I just hate pointless interviews. I'm sure we've all done them. It's like, I just had this interview. It's the 5th stage, and they just asked me the exact same questions that I've been asked before. And also, the person I interviewed was clearly very clueless on what the job is and what the purpose is and why it's even being hired. And all of that is just wasted effort, wasted energy on both parts. That's a very quick fire way to destroy your employer brand. Like, employer brand is someone saying to you, I interviewed at that startup the other day. It was a terrible experience. And then like that is just a chain reaction. Or someone would be like, I interviewed there. I didn't even get the job. They are awesome. You should definitely apply. That's like the most positive employer brand experience. And that is irrelevant as well.
Yeah, when you go through the process. Actually, regarding Miki's point, because he was saying that the person pisses off somebody during the hiring process, they could be other way around. That somebody in the hiring process pisses you off where you don't want to take that job anymore. That's also not rare, where somebody's not like aligned with what they're hiring or so forth, just decides to sabotage the entire process.
Yeah. When I was a graduate interviewing at recruitment agencies, and I actually had someone put their shoes up on the table and be like, sell me this pen.
Jesus Christ.
And the thing is, because I was so...
Before or after before or after Wolf of Wall Street? Like, that's an important
before as well.
Wow.
Yeah. I've been asked to sell a pen in interviews so many times, and then thankfully, I think the Wolf of Wall Street like stamped it out because it became so cliche.
Like, God. What are you on?
I still can't.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I still can't sell a pen. I never learned.
Well, now you sell startups.
Maybe there's one more thing to what Joe said. It's also like, let's say you're hiring a CTO, right? And you have this idea of where your company's going and whatever, but you want, I don't know, your engineering managers to meet that CTO. Like, you need to keep in mind the biases of the people who are advising you as well as your own, because your junior engineers or your ICs, they'll probably want someone who's like them. This guy is super technical. He knows all of these new things that we can learn from him. That's not going to drive strategy at a high level. That's going to be another IC. Whereas maybe your marketing person has a different idea and whomever has a different idea of who you should hire. And actually, you're, as the CEO, if you're hiring C-level, that's why the decision should sit with you ultimately, because no one is going to give you the full kind of decision. You need to piece that together with people you trust. So I think that's maybe just one point to add on top of, is like, build this team that you trust. They'll all share a kind of different perspective. Then you have to Frankenstein together enough to make a decision.
I was just going to quickly agree and just say, I always say to founders, hiring process is not a democracy. Like, you should have a single decision maker on hires. Everyone contributes.
Companies are not democracies either.
No.
Yeah.
That's sad true. Not even a sad true. It is what it is. I wanted to, like, since we talked about these, funny mistakes or process implosions, what has been the most painful hiring mistake you've seen in hiring? Not necessarily you've made, but you've seen done in hiring.
I paused for a second just because, because there's just been so many, I guess. The one that comes
fun one, not a bad one.
Yeah. No, I've had it multiple times. Like, funny enough, being in this VC, I mostly hire on the operational side, like, in their C-level tracks, CRO, CMO, CFO, COO, etc. But before that, I spent all my career hiring for tech and engineering, mostly tech and engineering. So the amount of times where I'm like, you can only draw a horse to water, right? It doesn't mean they'll drink it. If a hiring manager's like, no, this engineering position does not need a coding test, I'll be like, are you sure? Are you sure? Who's going to be assessing their code? You can just ask them questions. I'm like, okay, well, I'm just a facilitator of said process, so I'm not the decision maker here. So yeah, I've seen it before where they hire a software engineer, give them a comfy signing on bonus and everything else, and then it's very evident, even within the first 2 weeks, it's like, oh no, they just were incredible at BS and just getting into that. They just literally can't do the skills that they said they could do.
They haven't coded in 8 years. They've been managing engineering.
They said they knew Python. Turns out they pair programmed in Python once or something.
That's, by the way, Joe, that's a very interesting point. Since you were glazing Mazer in the beginning of the podcast, we had this argument not an argument, but he was talking about how important, coming from the US side, how important it is to close the hire quickly. And I was arguing on the point of like, no, you should really test and take your time to make sure that there's a fit. And there seems to be this difference between hires in the US and hires in the Europe, because in US, it's at will. You hire somebody, not a fit, fire the next one, and so forth. There's plenty of talent. And in Europe, we're like really careful and making sure that there's a cultural fit, a DNA fit, a salary fit, a values fit. Like, all the fits have to come together before you make the hire.
Yeah, I'm generally down the middle. Geographically in time zone, and also in this as well. In that, I think if everyone in the company is really clear on a fairly standardized interview process, so like first call's always with your recruiter, whoever's owning that, then it's a call the hiring manager, then it's some sort of test, then it's a final interview, and a final interview usually has these sections. Like, everyone can just move through that so fast. Like, just moving fast doesn't mean less quality of assessment. You can actually do both, and the only way that you can get to a well-oiled machine is through consistency and doing it over and over. Also, if the team is very practiced at making these hiring decisions together, they can make a really strong hiring decision fast as well. I think speed, but speed is ultimately the startup's greatest strength. Like I think Microsoft, just to mention them again, I think they're still sitting at
Super evil megacorp, you mean?
Yeah. I was about to say I've got good friends on the Xbox team, but I was like, nah, they're all good. They're fine. Yeah. I think they're still sitting at like time from having your final interview to time to getting your contract is about a month, right? And I'm like, if you have a candidate that, I'm just about to head to a final interview with this big company and you're a startup, but that's fine. We can actually run you through the interview process in like a couple of days.
Today.
Today. We could do it all today. And it'd be like, if you could block your whole day, the morning's going to be this, then it's going to be this. By the way, like if you fail at any stage, obviously you'll drop out and we won't continue. But if you make it all the way through, we can do it this fast. That's a small company or startup's biggest strength. It's the speed of decision-making, speed of process. But yeah, some people believe, they hear the hire fast thing, and that means to hire fast, therefore it must be a one-stage process. It's like, whoa. No, do not do that. Still keep all the rigor in there. Just learn how to do it fast. So
make fast decisions.
Yeah, I think so. And and the only way you can make a fast decision is by it not being a democracy as well. So like you want all of the data points, all of the feedback, everything from everybody. But ultimately it's on one person, usually the hiring manager. Startups could be the CEO. They pull in all of the feedback, talk to everybody, then they make the call. And that's where you can have a scenario where majority of people in the interview process said no, and you can still actually make a good hire. And the inverse as well.
Monarchy works, right, Joe?
God save the king, obviously.
So Miki, painful hiring mistakes you've seen.
This is mine, and maybe this is one that goes to people who help other people hire, whether internally or externally. I've had people who are perfect, like I knew they were perfect for the role. And, I speak with the hiring manager, CEO or whatever, and they're like, I don't know. I think their experience here and there, they didn't really do that. And then I'm like, no, they did this and this and this. And we're arguing about this. And really what's happening is he or she's just like, I don't like this person that much. I can't say that, but I don't like this person that much. I have never once succeeded in pushing someone like that. And there's been times, especially earlier in my career, where I've caught myself just endlessly arguing about things like this, winning the argument, but like losing the battle because actually I'm not helping, because just the finality of it, if you don't want to work with someone, no matter how good they are, you just shouldn't, for both of your sakes. And I think like for me, that was a really big lesson, and kind of like in humility, and also just taking a step back and understanding like more the human side of things. So I think it's that, like you really can't convince someone to like someone else and want to work with them. You can convince them about their functional experience, their whatever, their skills, their competence, their potential, but only if that really is the concern, and if it's not just someone trying to be polite and saying like, no, I don't want to work with this person. So yeah, that's one, and I've seen that mistake made by myself multiple times, and every person who I've ever met who works in the field that I work in has a story similar to that, where they try to do that, and I think it almost always failed. So that's mine.
Well, on that note, we've talked distortion fields, we've talked hiring mistakes, employee founder fits, faced Jordan Mazer multiple times. Shout out to A16Z talent head. Quoted Horowitz more than twice in a podcast. So I think it's a fine to end it at this point, and to conclude that, founders do love to talk about strategy, product, AI, markets, but in the end, your company becomes the people you choose to bet on. And I don't see hiring personally as a checklist. I see it as a way to transmit the founders' madness, their standards, their ambitions into the human beings, their team, and turn it all into a reality. So I think if anybody should take anything out of this podcast, it should be that great teams aren't hired, they're built, one courageous, uncomfortable decision at a time. So thank you for listening. Links to Joe and to Miki below in the description. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
You did it. You made it to the end of the episode. As a fan of the show, it would help us out if you'd subscribe and leave us a review on the podcast service of your choice. Those stars and likes, while a small action on your part, mean a lot to us and help to grow the show. More importantly, are you a member of the Deconstructor of Fun Slack group? If you have 5 years or more of games industry experience, go to deconstructoroffun.com/Slack and apply to join. Join the games industry best professional community filled with peers always willing to lend a hand, or subscribe to our newsletter to get all the latest insights from the Deconstructor of Fun content creators. Thanks for listening.